Right, well, I'm going to go ahead and I just want to kick this off by welcoming everybody today. I'm Patrick Baker, Director of the South Dakota Arts Council. And I just want to bid you all a good afternoon. And on behalf of the South Dakota Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you all today for today's Art for Life virtual training, and really thank you for participating in today's session. This really, truly, to me, marks a momentous occasion here in the offices of South Dakota State Arts Agency. And the reason is we're bringing together a number of creative aging initiatives and efforts that we've embarked upon here over the last 3 to 4 years. And a number of those in partnership with some of the organizations you're going to hear from today. In fact, it's really nice to see some familiar faces already on this call. So here are just some of the major milestones along this journey to today. In 2017, the North Dakota Council on the Arts invited the South Dakota Arts Council to partner with them in offering an Art for Life toolkit to all community arts councils. Also, it went out to all elder care facilities in the state of South Dakota. Some of you may even remember receiving those, and you're going to hear a whole lot more about Art for Life this afternoon, our purpose for being together. Now, the following year, the South Dakota Arts Council worked with the Sisseton Arts Council and the Edgewood Elder Care Facility to make Sisseton the first Art for Life pilot site in the state of South Dakota. Not long after, SDAC started working with the Chautauqua Artisans Market and then also the State Veterans Home to make Hot Springs the second AFL pilot site in our state. And then we had a big breakthrough this year in 2021. We applied for and received a Leveraging State Investments in Creative Aging grant. That's a mouthful. I always have to read that one, in early 2021. And the South Dakota Arts Council has been working to build toward these virtual trainings since receiving that grant, with an overarching goal of bringing a few new AFL pilot or Art for Life pilot communities on board. So we're really excited about the opportunity to work with you all as interested partners in this endeavor. So before we begin, I just want to offer sincere thanks to Troy Geist, the Folklorist and Traditional Arts Program Manager, and the North Dakota Council on the Arts for developing and sharing the amazing Art for Life program with us. Also, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, as well as Aroha Philanthropies out of Minneapolis for the financial support that we needed to expand our creative aging and Art for Life opportunities here in South Dakota, not to mention the National Endowment for the Arts for really making creative aging a focus area for state arts agencies across the country. And then also, I really want to thank the board of the South Dakota Arts Council, and in particular, Deputy Director Rebecca Cruz and South Dakota Traditional Arts Manager Ann Hatch, who you're going to hear from very momentarily, for all of their tremendous work this year building toward this opportunity. So again, I just want to thank you all for being with us here today, and I'm really happy to know that we're embarking on this journey together with you all. Thank you.
Great. Excuse me. Thanks, Patrick. So I'm on this first part of the training. I'm Annie Hatch, and I live in Rapid City. And I'm going to start to screen share a PowerPoint presentation. Jesse, I don't know if you have any advice for how to view the screen share or the screen and the speaker for us. Jessie is our technical support, and I really want to applaud her efforts in hopefully helping me click around. You're on mute.
If you go to the upper right corner and you see a little button that says view, and click that and then select side by side speaker, then you should see a nice view.
So thank you for that welcome, Patrick. It's been a really exciting for me. I'm new to the state, and I'm not so new to this program. I've spent years hearing it discussed and presented from my peer in North Dakota, Troy Geist, and I'm just delighted now to see how it has been implemented already in South Dakota, and how we have this funding now to expand it and welcome a couple of new sites on board. I just feel very grateful, as Patrick mention that you've taken the time to come and listen and learn. It's a very, very busy time during the holiday season and with all of the pressures. My answer to most questions, how you doing, is just like, it's too much. So the fact that you've carved out some time during this period when it's just too much, I'm really grateful for that. And I want to recognize something that I'm learning to do is recognizing that I now live on tribal lands here in South Dakota and in the Black Hills, and that I personally support efforts towards reconciliation for those lands. And I prefer female pronouns, she and her. And it's important that I recognize the diversity that we share here in the state of South Dakota. During this process, I really want you to ask questions, raise your hand, put them in the chat. This will really help me as I'm explaining things and as we're bringing more host sites on to know what kind of information it would be best to present up front. And then it might just get that I might have missed or left out. And I also want to ask Patrick and Rebecca to be vigilant about anything that I've left out or needs clarification to jump in and do that on behalf of this program. So we're going to start with a little groundbreaker that moves into what are folk arts. I thought that this might be a fun way to introduce those of us. It's a small enough group that I think that we can go around and introduce ourselves with the name and affiliation, if you're an artist, or with an elder care facility, local arts council. And then also to reflect a little bit on, since we're in this intensive holiday season, what time do you serve a holiday meal? I see a typo already on this main screen. And if you could name just one meal that is special to you. So I'll start, Annie Hatch, and with the South Dakota Arts Council with the traditional arts program. I serve, my family serves, this doesn't speak to the family I married into, I serve my family meal at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And one special thing that we serve is so nasty, but we go through the effort to create it every year. I've kind of dropped the ball in my generation, but it's dried corn that's been reconstituted in milk and butter. And it takes hours to prepare. And every summer there are trays of corn drying on top of the refrigerator so we could reconstitute it with sugar and butter and milk all day on Christmas. And yeah, we just serve, and everybody takes a little bite, and we just talk about how nasty it is and how difficult it is to create. So I'll pass it on perhaps to you, Patrick, if you can help break the ice so we can get into the remaining group.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annie. So the one I'll go, since I already introduced myself, the one I'll go to is a Christmas Eve tradition in my family. And for whatever reason, it's been my father, I guess, probably because he actually likes oysters, who's carried on this tradition of serving oyster stew every Christmas Eve. We don't have a time, but we do like to fight every year over whether or not we go with my mom's tradition, her family, of opening gifts after we eat the oyster stew on Christmas Eve, or waiting until Christmas morning. But every year, you can rest assured, as long as there are oysters on the shelf at the grocery store, we have oyster stew on Christmas Eve.
Thank you. And Rebecca?
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Cruz. I'm the Deputy Director of the South Dakota Arts Council. And I'm actually located out in Hot Springs. Outside of Hot Springs is where I live, and my office is in Hot Springs. So Annie and I are kind of the West River contingency of the South Dakota Arts Council staff, and the rest of our office is in Pierre. So I was thinking about this. We don't really have any specific food traditions in our family. We generally do, whoever's hosting does the big main dish, and then everybody else brings the sides. But when I was reading Annie's prompt earlier today, part of it said food or activity. And what I thought of was that my family is very musical. and we sing rather than pray. We have sort of a blessing, a few different sort of blessing songs that we would do instead of a prayer before a meal.
That's lovely. So I'm just going to go round robin. I'm going to call on Phyllis.
Unmute. And I am Phyllis Packard and the current chair of the Vermilion Area Arts Council. And I'm also a weaver, which I think there's one up behind me somewhere, and our holiday miraculously is going to be on the holiday due to parts of the family being in theater. It's often celebrated at other times other than the actual date. That's the one curious of our family. Whether it's Thanksgiving, Easter, or Christmas, it's hopeful to be on the actual date. We do have a number of specialty foods. The one that is required at every Christmas dinner is a chocolate steam pudding, which is an old English recipe that is somewhere between death by chocolate and then it is served with a New England topping called hard sauce. Hard sauce is spelled H-A-R-D, and you can spell sauce. New England, as in, I grew up in Boston, and this is from the Boston, New England tradition. And let's see, there was other point of the recipe for hard sauce is, as I was told by my mother-in-law, is a pound of butter, pound of sugar, and a healthy dose or 2 or 3 of brandy. And that's the entire recipe.
It sounds delicious. Thank you. I'll jump to Rhonda now.
Well, my dad's parents were from Czechoslovakia, so one of the big things that I remember growing up when we would get together for Thanksgiving is my grandmother would make potato dumplings, and I wish I had some now. And then also she would make pastries called kolaches, and with different types of filling in them. And so we would usually eat when we all got together around 1 in the afternoon. So they were some good times to remember. Well, also I live in Hot Springs, and I'm from Chautauqua Artisans Market, and I'm on the board of Chautauqua, and I'm also one of the artists there.
Thank you. So next up, I have Rosemary.
Hello. A specific, let's see. Well, I'm Rosemary Bookman. I retired from teaching last May and finished an internship for becoming, or the certification, or to earn the certificate for artist in healthcare at USD. So I am transitioning into a new career and will be working at Sanford Vermilion Medical Center this new year. I serve my holiday meal whenever I think I can get it ready. So sometimes it's in earlier part of the day, sometimes it's in the evening. It's whenever we all agree on a time that everybody can be there and sit down and do it. And one holiday food specific to my family, which my parents were from Kentucky, is Southern cornbread stuffing.
Nice, lovely. And Beth, have I called on you?
Hi, I'm Beth Simonson. I'm from Highmore, part of the Highmore Area Arts Council. We eat our meal whenever works for us. One holiday food that my mom always has made is a 3-layered Jell-O salad that's got red, kind of a yellow, and a green layer. So she's always, every year has had that. So
Nice. Nice. Thank you, Beth. I'll go to Marley now. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Marley Hayes. I am from Sioux Falls, and I'm one of the artists that participates in the Artists in Schools and Communities program. For a tradition, my family always made sugar cookies, and then my husband's family always did lefse. So we still, now that we're together, bring both to the table and kind of participate making it with each of our families separately, and then started our own tradition of doing both.
Oh, nice. I like the blending. Thank you. And Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie King. I'm the staff person for the Vermilion Area Arts Council. And my family does like snacks and soup on Christmas Eve traditionally, but this year we decided that nobody ever eats the soup. So we're doing nacho and taco bar. And then my husband and I started a tradition of doing Christmas lasagna on Christmas Day because we own our pizza. So we're really into Italian food. So we just made it up.
Oh, I love that adaptation. That's great. And Pat, could you share now? Thanks.
Can you?
Yes.
No.
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks, Pat.
Oh, you can't see me though. What did I do wrong? I can. Okay. If I hit share screen, can you see me?
I can see you. We can't.
You're there now.
Oh, all right. Okay. Okay. My name is Pat Shaver. I live in Sturgis, or outside of Sturgis. I'm a member of the Sturgis Area Arts Council. And, you know, when we're new to the Arts for Life project, but I'm very interested in learning more about it. And in my family, we sort of have the big holiday meal whenever everybody can get together, and a couple of special foods that seems like we always have is one thing is what we call green salad, and it's one of those that has green Jell-O and coconut and pineapple and Cool Whip in it. And then the other thing that we have a lot is a cookie it's kind of a sweet bread cookie that's called a kringla, that's made with flour and sour cream. It's like a Norwegian recipe, and it's really sweet and little white bow nuts, and only the Norwegians would go so far then as to put butter on top of this sweet cookie, and that's what we do. So
But I love
salad and quick kringlas along with whatever the main dish is.
I love the idea of putting butter on cookies. I think I need to start that tradition here.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Jane, I'll go to you now.
Hi, I'm Jane Rasmussen. I'm the director of the Arts Council in Sisseton. And a tradition that we have, well, I come from a large Scandinavian family on my dad's side, so it would be hard to pick something because both my husband and I grew up with a lot of Scandinavian foods at Christmas. So the one thing that stands out that connects a little bit with what Phyllis was saying was that my mom was English. And so in the midst of all the white sugary flour things, there was always a flaming plum pudding on Christmas Eve. And so that's something that I remember. And when mom got old, got so that she just couldn't do that anymore. My daughter came home from college and she said, we've got to make that plum pudding. So it was Christmas break. We took out the recipe and then we realized you're really supposed to make it around Thanksgiving because you put all these, dried fruits together that are just loosely bound. It's just a lot of dried fruits and loosely bound with some other ingredients and then soaked in brandy for at least a month. And so we have very funny memories of trying to really soak it hard that year and get it done by Christmas, but it was a lovely surprise. Then we also, you steam it for like 6 hours and we didn't have the contraptions to steam it. So that was kind of a fiasco. And then finally you flame it, so there was a lot going on in the kitchen as we brought this plum pudding out into the dining room, but I'll always remember how delighted my mom was when the flaming plum pudding came out. So we do that, even though not everybody likes plum pudding, but I do think the tradition will continue.
Nice, thank you. I love the idea of flames too.
Yes, it's very celebratory.
So we'll go on to Mary. Oh, and Mary, you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, we've got two
I'm Mary
Marys.
Whip
We'll do Mary Whip.
from.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just realized we had two
sorry.
Marys. So Mary, start. We'll follow with
Oh.
the other Mary Hinkle.
Okay. I'm Mary Whip and I'm from Edgewood, and I'm an artist with the Artists in Schools and Community project with the South Dakota Arts Council. And it's easy for me to recall our tradition, which goes back more than half a century. And it was interestingly a result of my father not liking oyster stew. So every year we have something called kedgeree, and kedgeree is kind of it's an old type of dish that always, well, it originates from kind of a mixture of English and Eastern Indian cuisine. And it always contains fish and rice. Our version is from the old red and white Betty Crocker cookbook, and it has a North American twist to it. The rice is wild rice, and we gobble it up like the Scandinavians gobble up lutefisk. We love it. And I've been known to make triple and quadruple batches. It's a great thing because we make it ahead of time. And then Christmas Eve, all you have to do is throw it in the oven and bake it. So I'm looking forward to it again this year.
Yeah,
Thanks.
lovely. Now this person, I'm afraid I'm going to massacre your name. Is it Lavonne?
Oh, I think that's Lavonne.
Lavonne.
That just has an
Lavonne.
initial in front of her name.
Oh, okay. I was trying to put a spin, like a Scandinavian spin on it.
I'm sorry, I don't know why it came up that way.
No problem.
My name is Lavonne.
Okay.
The H is an initial that pops up on strangely sometimes. I don't know. So I work with Beth Simonson, who's a phenomenal person in Highmore, South Dakota. I hope she's listening. She is the chairman of our very small arts council. And I'm a retired art teacher. I've been retired for over a decade already. I retired very young, 35. So, no, I'm kidding. Traditions for Christmas. Until a few years ago, when all my daughters married not English or Irish fellas, we always had oyster stew. And my mother was the master at making it. And she did teach me how to do that, but they don't really like it. So now we have lefse, because most of them are Norwegian, and my husband is Norwegian. His mother always made kroomkake and a punch on Christmas Eve and a hot dish. So that's about it. For the first time in about for 50 years, my husband and I are going to one of our daughter's houses for Christmas Eve and for Christmas Day. She lives in Iowa. So we are changing things up a bit. They are not coming here. We are starting to go to their places. So I'm looking forward to it.
Opportunity for new things to come about. All right, then we'll have to catch up with Mary Hinkle. I'm sorry, I skipped you, Mary. Oh, now we need to, you're on mute. Jesse, can you help unmute her?
I am only able to ask people to unmute. I'm not able to actually unmute. So I think she must have stepped away for a second.
Well, she's making an effort to unmute.
Oh, Mary Hinkle.
So Mary, how about if we come back to you? Let's see if we could, if we can resolve that. So Mary, in the meantime, we'll go to Judy Larson.
First of all, I feel like I have to give full disclosure because I have Lemon in my background. I'm from Lemon. I do live in North Dakota. So Lemon's a border town, and I happen to live on north of town. So I have the joy of working with Mr. Troy Geist himself in my folk arts apprenticeship in accordion. So, I'm really, really excited that Lemon is going to be bringing Art for Life to our community after hearing Troy talk about it for years, and just thinking, I feel like it's the best program ever. So I am the treasurer for the Grand River Arts Council, and that's why I'm here today. And as far as a holiday meal, our family is very flexible, lots of healthcare people. And so we end up having our meals whenever it works out for the most people. And holiday specific food would be something that's like legendary is my grandma Nora's fudge. She makes the best fudge. She makes such good fudge that my daughter, who's also named Nora, has a little fudge side business with her grandma's recipe for fudge. So I can't make that fudge that well, but at least my child can. So we still get to enjoy it every year.
Thank you. And Ari, Creative Care.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's good to see some new and some familiar faces. My name's Ari Albright, and I am the arts program coordinator at Sanford Vermillion Medical Center. I teach arts and health at the University of South Dakota, and am a roster artist with the South Dakota Arts Council. So with some friends on this call. As far as a holiday meal time and a tradition, my mother's Seattle Dutch babies, or egg puffs, the family calls them, are the one things that we always look forward to. And fortunately, my sister has figured out how to make them. And that's usually like a Saturday morning at about 11. But the family's super impatient, so you often see them eating standing up instead of, the egg puffs coming out of the oven and getting to the table. They're like giant crepes. Maybe some of you know this, and you sprinkle lemon and powdered sugar and eat them with your hands. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mary Hinkle, I see that you're, we have sound.
We're from Highmore, and we're just beginning the Arts for Life program. For Christmas tradition, we have oyster stew and hors d'oeuvres on Christmas Eve. And on Christmas Day, whenever we can get together, we usually have prime rib. And a lot of in our family do the lefse, because we're Norwegian. Norwegian, German. We have both kinds of traditions.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for finding the audio button. And Anne from NPA, we haven't heard from you. We're just wrapping up. I think we have 3 more.
Hi.
Oh, now we've lost your audio now, Anne. We can have you visually.
Okay, I'm Ann Tacker. I'm from Watertown. I'm a fiber artist. I paint on silk with dye. I also am a metalsmith. I am president of Northern Prairie Arts, Watertown's Arts Council. I'm on the Artists in Schools and Communities touring, or the Artists in Schools and Communities residency roster. My family, I don't know that we have a tradition. My mom grew up in England during World War II. So, you know, up until the time she was 10 years old, she had an intact family. After that, after the war, everything changed. And we kind of roll with punches, whatever somebody's game to make. Yeah, that's about our tradition. We always make sure to get together, and we get together more than once during the holidays.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Interesting how the war made such a strong impact.
Oh, huge.
On those traditions.
Yeah.
So I'll call on Yoko now. If Yoko's available to share with us. We'll see once we can get through to Yoko. Let's move to Tammy. Tammy, we don't see you, but if you can join through audio, great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Tammy Granatus. I work with the KF Foundation on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. I am a Tazipcho and Hukpapa, so Christmas is a little different in my home. I also worked most of my adult life with a Christmas toy drive, so Christmas usually meant sleeping because I had a hard 2 weeks. Now I have Christmas at home with my kids. I have 4 children, and our big meal is just breakfast. We make sure we get a really big breakfast in because after we open presents, it's a really lazy day for me because that's a lot of kids. Otherwise, that's about it for me. The KF Foundation is a capacity building organization on Cheyenne River, and we work towards helping families find ways to bridge the gaps between social health, economic health, and physical health. And so a way we do that is through encouraging capacity in the arts and for them to be able to find ways to support their families that way. So Art for Life is new for us. It'll help a lot of our local artists be able to share intergenerationally and also find ways to support themselves and their families. So I'm excited to learn more about it and see how we can use this program in our communities.
Thank you. I'll return again to Yoko, see if Yoko is able to connect with us. Yes, thank you.
Can you
Yoko.
hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I'm supposed to introduce myself, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Yoko, and I'm a part of Artists in School and the Community only for a little over a year. It's COVID hit, so I haven't been active a lot. And I'm curious what your program will offer. And since I'm Japanese, I don't have much tradition regarding Christmas, but for New Year Eve, we eat noodle for longevity. So that's good enough.
Yeah, no, it was not, we just happened to be in a holiday season, and New Year's is certainly one of those that has, special traditions associated. So interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what, remind us or tell us what art form you specialize in.
I do ceramics.
Okay.
But since ceramics requires kilns, for a program like yours in the school for the artists for the schools, I'm thinking of switching to air dried clay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
thank you.
but I haven't had a chance to try it. So
somehow all of you got mixed up on the screen, and I don't know whether I managed to catch everybody. Did Judy, were you, that's the one that I'm thinking, did we miss Judy Larson? Nope, she presented. Okay. So let me know if there's anyone that hasn't had a chance to share. It looks like we're all on board. So I'm gonna thank you all for participating and being so personal and sharing not just, you know, an item, but actually the story behind it. It just helps provide a richness to know just how we each value in our own family and our own practices, the kinds of traditions that help make a holiday stand out from just every other day. And I'm so glad that we took that amount of time, because this really helps me draw on your experiences to help define what are folk arts. So I think this exercise does two things for us. It helps with the idea of what folk arts and traditional arts are in terms of how they reflect to ourselves in our own practice, as well as recognizing that we share certain facets with other people, although they might differ. It also is a great exercise in how this might work in different settings, and maybe in an elder care setting as an icebreaker, or as a lead in to then an art component or an artistic activity that draws from the food or the holiday or the discussion or the family history. So we all have these bits of knowledge and experiences and tradition that can be shared and then can be rendered through an art experiences. And that's really is what is embodied in the Art for Life program, is starting with this connection and with these traditions and building on that as an entry point to provide a very intensive and engaging and enriching arts experience for the community, whether it's in elder facility or a senior center or somewhere in the community. So I'll refer now to my PowerPoint and move through. I could go through the what are folk arts pretty quickly. I think because that exercise was such a great illustration, we know through that practice that folk arts are rooted in community, family, or cultural life, as opposed to what would be called idiosyncratic arts, or for a visual artist that's just creating art in a medium from their own imagination, or perhaps a classical artist or a theater performer that's drawing on text and experiences that come out of a specific art form. So learning the classical music, learning the classical instrument, learning a classical technique to perform theater on a stage. And it's reflective of community life. I love this hooked rug. It's an example out of Shell, Wyoming. I lived for 15 years in Wyoming before coming to South Dakota. And it encapsulated, again, the family story, historical location, an old homestead. It's located in Shell, so it's the Bighorn Mountains are in the background. It shows lifestyle and lifeways of agricultural is also shared in there. The memories of riding a school bus to school from this rural location, a father who played the violin, and a mother who helped tend to the animals. So it just here through an art form of rug making comes a whole rich tapestry of experience that you see in any folk experience. Folk traditions and folk arts crosses artistic genres. It can be a craft item. We've talked about food items. It could be performative. I was shared the singing tradition that Rebecca's family has. It could be dance. And again, these are art forms that share beyond just an individual performance and an individual interpretation and an individual creation. These are creative activities, but they're deeply rooted in a community and a shared cultural experience. And again, with the shared community, just even in our discussions and just descriptions of what we ate, we call on our ethnic heritage, perhaps shared cultural values and behavior. Often language is a big part of it. Specific language groups share specific values. There's religion, religious background, occupational, such as the agricultural history, and then the geographic region, as we saw in the shell example, the bighorns in the background. All of these communities, and we're members of each one, and we have different, we each come with our own individual collective of our shared communities. And these communities come into play at different times and for different art forms. So it's fun as a folklorist to ask people what community they feel that they're representing and working in, and to learn a little bit more about the artist and how they ground their work. What's also specific in the folk and traditional arts is how they're learned through demonstration and conversation, practice and intimidation. People get together, sometimes very informally. These things are passed on through playing together, performing together, cooking together. It's not through a specific instruction or curriculum. It doesn't come out of an academy. It comes out of front rooms and church halls, and studios, backyard, barns. This photograph that's the nickel harpa. It's from Scandinavia, and they're performing in a garage at an event. So these things, sometimes they're hard to find or parse through because they are not in an art gallery or museum or concert hall. To perform more informally, and sometimes they're tucked away. And this helps this program can help bring those out. Along with the learning, the Arts Council has a program specific for the teaching. It's the Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Project, where a master artist will work one-on-one or in a small group of people to ensure that these traditions endure and that they thrive and they continue on into the next generation. So they're perpetuated throughout the generations. And here's a photograph of a grandmother with her granddaughter teaching, having been taught saddle making, and again, passing this on through the generations. And so these are arts with a deep history and a deep connection, but they also endure because they're constantly reinvigorated. So artists can take their traditional work and make it valuable today. It has meaning and it has value today, and it's very dynamic. So any of these art forms can be recast to be important for those of us who are today. We even heard from some of us today how the traditions are shifting or moving to adapt to new times, new families, new commitments. So with that exercise and with this quick overview, are there any questions about the art forms that the Art for Life program is seeking to bring out? Is there any discussion? Or I think you all brought such a wonderful vantage point and experience to show how folk arts are deeply intrinsic to our life. With the folk arts and aging, it's just, there's a lot to be said about in the aging process, the process of reflecting on one's life and the stages in lives. And then often the people that I work with are elders, and they've come through a lifetime of experience to become preeminent in their community. And now as seniors are able to give back, and their legacy is then teaching and sharing. And so the folk artists themselves are often members of the community. Also, it's these treasured moments and memories like we just shared of the holiday traditions and special foods, the family stories. These are all things that everyone who's participating in this program has, and we can draw from, and we can help elevate, and we can help provide depth and meaning, and very personal meaning to the art activities, whatever we might choose to focus on. I'd like to think of the folk arts as an ease of entry for the artists. We found that we have, asking about a specific food, we were able to draw from having a specific food, and or the reason why we might not have a specific food, or how our food might look different than someone else's. So it's just an easy point of entry when we look at the folk and traditional arts. And I provided these quilts here because quilts or tapestries or fabrics that are created are given throughout our life and at different life stages. There's a quilt for a baby quilt is gifted. There's Mormon temple quilts that are provided at the time of marriage. And then the star quilt is so important in this area to celebrate and honor various life stages from birth to graduation to death. So I think the folk arts, this is one example of how the folk arts are help create those networks and then also illuminate those networks and are part of the basis and the groundwork for these activities. Are there any questions before we go into the overview of kind of the philosophy and background of the arts and the activities that will be, we hope that you, that we see that these activities will take place. So the overview is going to be a lot faster and a lot less picturesque, but of course, everything is pointing to improving the emotional and physical health and wellness of elders. And all of these have been developed in North Dakota starting in 1998 when they first started presenting artists in elder care facilities and specifically the folk arts, and saw how meaningful these experiences were and wanted to create a specific program to make it happen in a more conscientious way. So this is not art therapy. This is not to address specific issues of aging that are related to, biological needs, but these are rather social. And the 3 plagues of loneliness, boredom, and helplessness are critical to fight and alleviate in order for also those other aspects of aging and disabilities that comes with growing older. So the goal is to bring the local arts agencies and the elder care facilities to identify artists and provide meaningful, repetitive, and long-term artist interaction and very intensive artist interactions. And this also is to extend beyond just the elder residents, but also the staff and the families and the communities at large. All of these activities can be expanded to bring the communities outside of the facility into the facility, and that's encouraged in every activity. So some of the key elements we found for success, as we've heard, we're all represented here: the local arts agency, the elder care facility staff, the artists, and the South Dakota Arts Council, all agreeing and coming together with a shared understanding of what we want to accomplish and putting the pieces together to accomplish it. At the local arts agency level, of course, they're the recipient of our funding, and they're the ones that will, issue the contracts that we'll talk about a little bit later, and taking care of some of the real technical side of the activities, assigning a coordinator be that from the agency or someone outside the local arts agency, but to have a agency coordinator that's in charge of communicating with the different partners, the artist in the elder care facility. The elder care facility is critical, providing the site and the location for comfortable activities in the space, and also a dedicated staff person and volunteers to help make that art activity happen in the facility, and to communicate to the artist and the local arts agency what would work best. They know the elders that will be participating, what the capabilities and abilities are, what some interests are, what some traditions that might resonate there, and really have a strong role in the success. And the artists too, their interest in working with the individuals, having spending deep time with the elders, and also the work leading up to it, finding out how they what adaptations might need to be made. We had Yoko talk about how the changing from air dried clay instead of using kiln clay is a way to adapt the work to be used in a different kind of setting. And so the artists, part of their work will be the preparation before even getting into the elder care facilities. And as the South Dakota Arts Council, we of course are the ones that bring the funding, can bring the pieces together, can provide the resources, and provide the steps, the training, the follow-up, and the follow-through for each of the host sites, and also create times for the hosts to come together and share from their experiences. And we'll be hearing from host sites and artists who have participated in the program as we're sharing with each other. And also, this comes with the commitment and the communication as well. And we've seen already just in the introductions how a lot of this is already in place for those of you who have committed to this program, and those of you who are looking at whether or not this will work in their own community. And the Arts Council's here to help ensure that it would be able to work in your community, that we're willing to work with you to see how we can make it go as smoothly as possible and be the best experience as possible. I think one thing that is strong about this particular program is the use of local artists and the folk artists. Every town has folk artists, and these activities can draw from those local artists and then tie in with perhaps a fine artist that can come up with an activity to help augment it. So one of my favorite, and we'll click through and just look at that quickly, activities is discussing weather stories, and have someone come in and help bring out the stories and the sharing, and then have an artist run an exercise about creating haiku from those stories. So coming in as a haiku workshop might be a little off-putting, but if it comes in as sharing weather stories, and then take those stories and really work with them in a creative way to write haiku, has a much stronger impact and a lasting impact that we're trying to achieve. So we know that there's over 60 activities to choose from, and I'm going to step out now and share the website quickly where these activities rest. This is the website, and we'll provide you a direct link, so you don't need to worry about that now. But the activity plans live here on this website. And I found going through this visual website a little daunting to try to click in and out of. And I was really happy to find that they have a list of titles to click directly into the PDFs. And you'll see that they're listed here by the activity title. And that gives you a pretty good idea of what kind of activities that will be, the topic of the activity, I guess I should say. And I'll just click into one of my favorites that I referenced is the creative writing and weather lore. So if you take some time with these activity materials, they're very thoughtfully laid out and described for them to be replicated in the community and in the host facility in terms of, and they're tied and true, put together by artists and caregivers as well. So it talks about the time, the materials, what the activity it is, how it directly relates to the 3 plagues, how it is, these activities are concentrating on how to alleviate loneliness and boredom and helplessness. So that's a very targeted part of the activities that are laid out. What's nice is they have additional reading and materials to better understand the focus of the activity plan, and then very detailed accounts on how to carry out that activity plan and that activity. So I'm just scrolling through, session 1, session 2. Hopefully people have access somewhere in their community to the book Sundogs and Sunflowers. I'm holding it up here. If you can see me, these lesson plans refer to specific pages within that book that can be brought into the activity plan. So there's great visuals and also things to read and share during the activity. So here we have a 3-session activity plan and information about the authors at the end. So this is an example of one of the activities. And again, there's more than 60 that have been created. And this also gives you a wonderful template for working on your own. If you're an artist or if you're in a community and have a specific interest in doing your own, or you can use these templates, or you can use the concepts behind these templates to, if and when you create your own and work with artists in your own community that might have a different direction to go in. So I will jump back. This website has lots of resources and I encourage you to spend some time looking through, and we will be experiencing one of these activities on Thursday that I'm really looking forward to participating in. So I'm going to go back to this PowerPoint and just talking quickly about the steps. We've made the connections, the contracts. We have templates for the grant contracts between the Arts Council and the State Arts Council. We have contracts related to an agreement between the local Arts Council and the host facility. We have examples of contracts between an artist and the local Arts Council. I think it's we have helpful things that we'll be providing once your team gets up and going. We hope to communicate with you during every step of the way, make things very clear, and we want you to come back and let us know how it's going. We have things to report back on that we work with the local arts community, and we hope that people find this successful and want to come back and continue it next year. Now, in follow-up, some of the details is we are providing a grant to each local arts council. That grant does not require a cash match. We do know that that time and effort related to funding and costs will be borne out by both the local arts council and the dedication and contributions of the host site, and then the artist will be receiving some of those grant funds through the local arts council. Funding can be spent on supplies, could be spent on adding a food the local, actually not adding a food component, but actually a supply component, and any cost related to the arts activity, marketing, and things if you want to advertise it to the general public. We ask that perhaps if there's a food component to it, and often that's recommended in the activities because the idea behind seeing the food and tasting and the smell of the food actually helps with the memory and the experience and helps draws out some of those stories. So you'll see in the activities, there's often like a social hour and a food served at the social hour, either prior or as follow-up to the art activity.
Hi, Annie.
Yes.
So sorry to jump in. We need to
we're
get
at 3 o'clock.
We're at, yes, we are. We need to get the next session set up.
Okay.
So, but Annie and I will be around to answer more questions. So we'll try, if you have questions about for the two of us, please hang on to those through the next session or put them in the chat and we'll come back to those. We just need to take a few minutes to get the next presenter set up here. Feel free to stay in the meeting room and just, take a quick break here while we do that. You can stay on or you can click off and rejoin. It's the same link. So let's take about probably 5 to 7 minutes to get that handled. And then we'll still try to end on time with the next session.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I'm here and you'll have my contact information to ask any specific questions. And so I hope I know I've covered a lot, but I thank you all. And I heard someone break at a Zoom meeting the other day. It's time to stand up and shake your butt. So I'll just close with that. And I'll see you back in 7 minutes.
Ants on there.
Would you like me to pause the recording? This is Jessie. Hi.
This is Tonya.
Hi, Tonya. Nice to meet you. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and Jane and Tonya. And you are set to go.
Jessie?
Yes.
We're seeing a black box over part of the slide. I think it may be a chat or a participants list.
There.
There you go. Thank you.
Are we back on?
Are we on?
You're on.
Well, welcome today. Jane and I are here to talk about the pilot program here in Sisseton, South Dakota. Jane being the sponsor of the arts agency and myself being an artist that participated in Art for Life many, many times over the past, 5 years?
Well, since 2018. It feels like 5 years, but that's because of COVID.
Feels like forever, but here we are.
Like 3.
We've had a very successful program here, and we just want to share with you. It's not as maybe daunting as it might seem. So if you could just go to the next slide. And there's our lovely faces. Jane, do you want to talk about what the local arts agency is or any of that?
Well, just that we were delighted, the Sisseton Arts Council, to be asked by the South Dakota Arts Council to be a pilot project. And so that's exactly what it is. It's a pilot. We starting something new, not always knowing what we were doing, not really having, a very exploratory learning process that then had a giant pause also because of COVID, and we're just picking it up again now, but we're delighted to share what our experiences have been.
I would just add that I've shot from the hip many times, so don't feel afraid that you can't ad lib a few things and just have fun. I think that the residents pick up on that. I really do. They love it when you laugh and giggle and try new things, and things happen that weren't maybe supposed to, you know, an accidental piece of art or what have you, but that's kind of how I operate.
And part of introductions, you are the
I am the local artist. I also teach here at Sisseton High School. This is my 14th year here, and I do a lot of the same lessons that I do at school, just teach them a little differently to sort of adjust them and accommodate for the age and some arthritis or vision or hearing loss.
And I'll just mention that when we started the pilot project, we did an introduction and a little bit of a training session, invited many local artists. And at that time, you know, we didn't realize that Tonya was going to be one that really just clicked with it and committed herself, found time to do it. And so in the process, she's really turned into our primary artist with it, the person that the residents would see time and time again, interspersed then with other artists throughout the time. So
what you're going to see is as we go through to the next slide, is just a little bit of information, which I feel like the previous speaker talked about, that this started in May of 2018. We did partner with an assisted living here in Sisseton named Edgewood. And I guess our program goal is to really fight the three plagues of the residents, which is the boredom and
loneliness, helplessness,
and all of those things. And so I feel like just bringing art and bringing new faces into the building is really kind of exciting for the residents.
And we may or may not have, Bobby Jo Ham is the director of Edgewood, and she was going to be driving today. She was going to see if she could link into us for a while, but we very much appreciate working with her and her support. And during the time that we've been at Edgewood, the activities director that we worked with went on, and we now get to work with a new one who we hope is on today too. So we did have that transition during COVID of a new activities director that we'll start with this week.
Right, we have a new activity this week. So we'll explain, I'll talk a little bit about that later. If you could go to the next slide. So also the previous speaker mentioned these things. Whenever possible, you should always have interaction between yourself and the residents or hands-on activities. And I'm not very good at this, but documenting the process. It's pretty hard to teach and take pictures.
But we did do that, and I was looking through the notes, and one thing that we always tried to get them in the local newspaper, and I think that the residents, when the paper came out, enjoyed remembering the activity through the picture in the paper. So it served many purposes, including being able to show some pictures today.
And I also want to just say that it's really important that the activity director be present just from start to finish with the activities and just be on board, because I'm like a stranger that first time I came in, and they're kind of selling your program for you, because those people the residents are very familiar with that director. And so they're inviting them to come to this exciting new activity, and they kind of build up the excitement. And then when you get there, there's people ready. They're ready for this new thing, or they kind of stand off and watch, and maybe the next time they'll join in. Do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay, next slide, please. So, for example, this week we are going to be doing a project starting tomorrow evening using vintage and costume jewelry and frames. So the glass and the cardboard will come out of the frame. The cardboard will be wrapped in velvet, and then we will hot glue or glue these vintage pieces of jewelry into, say, Christmas trees or a heart or a cross, different objects, depending on what the residents like. And I just felt like that was too much for one night. So I broke it into 2 sessions for this week.
And we plan to get people to talk about their own Christmas traditions, but also about jewelry and the fun that they had with it as they connect with perhaps stories about their own jewelry.
I just think about even I dug through, of course, my grandmother's jewelry thinking about this project, and I just think they'll love it. I really do. Even though maybe those pieces aren't their jewelry, I just think it'll bring back a lot of memories for them, and in a great way. So keep in mind your audience when you are getting these projects ready. I have had a couple of flops. I did a lesson called Zen Tangles, and that did not go over well. But you know, that's something I had to try. I didn't know, and I'm not sure if they just maybe it was just a little too many steps in the process. I'm not sure, but that didn't go over for me. That doesn't mean it wouldn't work for other residents at another facility. And that's kind of what you need to learn, is who your audience is and what they enjoy. Because each of us being in different communities, I think we're going to have different outcomes depending on what your folks are, you know, their heritage and all of that. Let's see, what else?
The volunteers. I think another really nice aspect of this is Tonya was just mentioning that she has 2 students coming to volunteer for 2 nights in a row now. So that intergenerational experience is really heartening to see too, the relationships that develop. So
you're going to see that in some upcoming slides. So if we could proceed to the next slide, please. So the particular project that's on the left of your screen with the clay bowls, I had a lot of little volunteers that were here with what's called Youth Works. And I'm not sure I know exactly what that program is, but maybe you do.
Well, I think it's a service program that brings youth into the community to be involved in the community, and the youth loved being able to come up to Edgewood, and the residents really appreciated that too.
They did, and especially with clay, I was a little concerned that their hands would get tired, and if their hands got tired, their little youth helper would just take over for a moment or help them cut off the objects, just trim things up. They just did an outstanding job. I think we could move on to the next slide. Okay, this shows just myself working with a resident, and she has passed. Makes me very sad. She was special. She loved, her name is Darlene. She loved doing art, and especially these clay bowls, the excitement. You can see it in her face right in that picture. She was so excited about this. And all of them were super excited after we finished. And they stayed there at Edgewood. I let the bowls stay there to dry. And I think they were there about 2 weeks, and they'd come behind the director's desk and want to peek in the boxes and see how they were doing. It was just the cutest thing. So it builds excitement. Even though you're not there, the project doesn't stop just because you walked out the door, you know. So if we could go to the next slide. So there was a lot of people there that day. There was a lot of youth. This was pre-pandemic, and we were not masked up, and we were one on top of the other, and we just had so much fun, just so much fun. You can see how engaged they are. They're just soaking it in, I think. So if you want to move to the next slide, please. There's again the finished bowls, and we can move on.
I don't think we got to see that they all did get glazed, didn't they?
Yes.
And then the final session, when the bowls were glazed,
That's right.
Didn't you have an ice cream party?
We had an ice cream party. That's right. That's right. So I don't document well, like I said before. So we don't have a picture of the finished product or the eating out of the finished product, but that was fun.
But we do have a sampling of pictures.
Yes.
And this one too is just a sample. I wanted to say that one thing that we discovered in the process was that we that we didn't really anticipate was that we were going to end up with this one primary artist that built a continuing relationship, just because Tonya kind of chose to do that. We used other local artists, but also when we had groups come into the school or community through the State Arts Council or other touring programs, we asked ourselves, is there something that that we could incorporate, that we could make into an Art for Life program? And we'd visit with the artists about it. And if they were willing to, then we created a program. And that really turned out to work out very well too. It's something that I think I would encourage. So the South Dakota Symphony had sent groups up here. We have a youth composing academy that's really exceptional in the summertime, and they come back and perform these youth compositions in the fall. And so they were willing to do a session at Edgewood, and then we were actually able to get a couple of the young composers to come in and talk about, you know, the story about why they composed this piece of work, and then the musicians would play it. And I think that that connected with the audience too, because the elders, because it gave them another chance to engage with young people and see what their ideas were about things. A couple of other, so we worked in different genres, you know, when we could do music, when we could do theater, when we could do storytelling, traditional things. So in the area of music, we also had local musicians come in, young violin students. They just really liked it when youth would come in, and whenever we would incorporate it with some kind of a storytelling component. Next.
So this was a pretty popular project that I did. I always kind of think, well, what would someone of my grandparents' age, well, at this point, my parents' age, enjoy? And I think all of them grew up making quilts, being wrapped in a quilt, so on and so forth. So we started there were 3 canvases, and I had it drawn out. And I will tell you that sometimes the pencil lines are a wee bit light for the eyes. So that once in a while you'd have to point like I am there in the picture and kind of show, okay, we have to stay in this line, or maybe you have to tweak it and draw with a Sharpie. So here you can just see a mix of different people, including gentlemen who painted on these canvases. If you could go to the next slide. That's the finished project. And people give me lots of different things, being the art teacher here in town, and vintage wallpaper books was one of them. So this was just a cool way to use really old wallpaper and things that, you know, patterns that maybe they had in their own kitchens. That's what I was kind of aiming for. I was looking for things that maybe were about 30 years old, wallpaper samples. And so those were glued in there again by the residents. I had them ready, but they just had to fit them in like a jigsaw puzzle. And then we used some gel medium to get those in place. You could go on to the next
think
slide.
what I'd like to say about that project was they were so enthusiastic about having those put in the wall in the dining room, and always showing them to people. And that's really important too, where they have the chance to see their work every day with some of those projects.
Yes, that photograph was taken of their work in their dining room there at Edgewood. So it was something they got to see every day, or show family members too. So wonderful.
Yeah. Next. We're really blessed to have the Dakota culture being very prominent in our community, and the Dakota people being so generous in sharing their culture. And so this was an engagement with Teospazina Tribal School. They brought their dance and drum group to Edgewood, so people got to experience their dance movements, the music. And Daryl Dakota, who is the culture teacher, who's who's just really wonderful at storytelling and sharing and answering questions. So that was a really nice experience. And again, the intergenerational connections between youth and the elders. Next. Storytelling and theater were other areas that we explored. This was a one-person show that we had in as a public performance, and it had to do with him portraying the story of his grandfather, who was involved in World War II. And he did it for the community. And then he brought it to Edgewood the next day. And it was right around veterans, and there were veterans in the audience. And he was good about sharing his story, but then getting people to talk about their experience or their memories. And I think, we were still learning. One of the adaptations that would have helped, I looked back at the notes and it was like, it was too long. The time span needs to be considered, especially if people are really listening to something. And then we always tried to arrange things if possible so that there'd be like a time to have refreshments afterwards, and then as people move around, and then the engagement picked up again. But being aware of attention span. Next. A couple of other things. Oh, yeah, we did, but they really connected with that theme. We also did another readers theater based on immigrant letters that they connected with. So theatrical performances, small theatrical performances really work well too, and can engage them in thinking about their own stories. Brian Akipa is a treasure of our area. He's a Dakota flute player, and he came a couple of different times. I think we'll hear him again later. So I'll just show you with his flute here, and we'll go next. Next slide. I've got here. Well, just a short clip of his. So you can imagine how peaceful his music made people feel. I remember another thing, he's very interesting to listen to, and he talked about his grandmother being the pianist at the Maizan Presbyterian Church. For 50 years, she played the piano, and as a little boy, he stayed with her in the summers, and he would go, and you could just, so that connection, even though there are not many tribal people usually that are residents at Edgewood, the stories across cultures that connect people are really significant and good for us to share. They are. Next.
This is a slide showing a still life lesson that I did. I believe this might have been 3 different sessions, actually. The first night I brought in the bottles and we sketched them out. And they were really good sports. It was something new for many of them. They hadn't been sketch artists in their past life. So they just rolled with me really well on this project. The next time we came back, then we painted, I think we just did the darks. I don't even, I think we did the dark values one night, and then I came back a second night and we did the light values. We also applied, oh gosh, the masking fluid. So we would have some highlights on the bottles, like shiny glass. And yeah, so the third night we got to pull the tape off, and they just, I think they were really proud of themselves. If you look at those, they're really beautiful. They did an awesome job. So I just think the picture on the right is actually Connie Wellnitz. She was the gal I've worked with since the beginning of this pilot program. And like we mentioned earlier, there'll be
As the activities
as the
director.
activities director. And this will be a new young lady that I've actually worked with at the high school. So we know each other, and that'll be a nice transition for me to work with her there at Edgewood, and in just a different capacity. So do you have anything to add about that one?
I don't think so.
Okay, next. Oh, this was a fun project. Again, we had the youth works come in, and you can see on the picture on the right, and everybody wanted to do this. This is wool felting. So we had little Cool Whip containers with water and little bars of soap. Everybody collects from hotels for me. And we just had all the supplies there. The kids were doing felting, the adults were doing felting. When they would get tired of this continual rubbing, you have to have friction to create the felting process. So they would pass it along to their youth partner. It just was great. You can see the bags with the wool in them kind of hanging out the top on the right. And if you look at the very far left photograph, there are what we were considering finished wool dryer balls. And they're not very large, but we're talking about getting this done in a very short period of time. I think we actually worked on this about 2 hours that day. It was just a fun project. They just talked amongst themselves, because once you learn what you're doing, it's just a very repetitive process. And so that was just conducive for a lot of talking between the young people and the residents.
And it felt therapeutic.
I know. I was so worried about this project, especially with all that friction and hand movement. They loved it. They loved it. Anything else you need to add?
No.
Okay, next. There's just another picture. They're just having a little conversation there while rolling out their felt balls. It's just so cute. Next, please.
Dallas Chief Eagle, it was an artist in schools and communities in the school for a week. And so we asked him if he'd be interested in doing a session with at Edgewood, and he was very happy to. It was really interesting to see how the work that he does with youth translated to working with elders. Now, I've always known him as a hoop dancer extraordinaire. So next, I think if you go to the next, this is Dallas hoop dancing for the group, and telling stories about what he's doing. And then next. And it's always so baffling for me to watch hoop dancing, but he had volunteers that wanted to make the animals, the bird shapes with him. And so there was that engagement. I don't know, that might be the last slide, but the other thing that he does, he's a mental health counselor, and he does a lot of work in the schools with young people. And he in that previous picture, you saw a buffalo robe on the floor, and then he brings this rock and he calls it Grandfather Rock. And I think if you go back one more. Yeah, you see a rock and the buffalo. And so he teaches mindfulness to young students. And these exercises help students kind of in school focus and and maybe, get rid of extra energy. So he talked to the elders about how he does that. And then he said, no, I'm just going to do my mindfulness exercises. And if you want to participate, you can, but you don't have to. It was really interesting to see how many did, because he talked about his own like body pains and how focusing can help relieve some of those things. And so as he was talking, it's like, wow, so much of what he was doing really did tie in with the three plagues. And again, another very cross-cultural experience that that people were really ready to try. And then after that, he spent a good hour with them, and then it was time to go down and have refreshments. And he asked if he could have some tea. And I think he spent another hour and a half just visiting with people, and they were mesmerized by him. They still remember his visits. So,
it's been a hit when they invite you back to their room to show you their personal items after the session.
So now
that's a hit.
you can flip through Dallas, those slides, and we'll see what's next. This was another really great experience that we had with, these are this is Deb Workman from the Dakota Players, and they come to do a theater residency in the school system with our youth. So they send 2 younger directors, but I called Deb and I said, we're exploring this idea of having, if artists want to also work with Edgewood. And she really loved the idea so much that she said, I'm going to drive up from Sioux Falls and help kind of get this rolling with our younger directors. And so they played theater games with the residents. And in that middle one, if I remember right, they formed some kind of a machine, a machine with different moving parts. And as they were able, each person had a role, and so it was kind of this teamwork machine kind of thing. And then Deb talked about, dancing traditions and how she loves to dance, and did they love to dance, and so they turned on some dance music, and Margaret Thuringer on the left, and she was just ready to get up and dance. And then there were others, and this the picture on the right is really poignant to me, because this was my neighbor across the street before she went to Edgewood, Winifred Schmidt. And she was over 100 years old, but she used to always tell stories about the dances in Grenville. If you wanted to get her going, you'd ask her about when she was young and the dances that she would go to. And so then she also, wanted to dance, and she and Deb were really having quite a dance, even though she, adapting from her chair. And I just couldn't help but wonder what world that brought her back into when she could dance. So I think that's, that's a group that we will work with again the next time that they come back. It was really fun. Next.
All right, and then this is more serious. This was during the pandemic, and shortly after all of the George Floyd incidents in Minneapolis, a local pastor had asked me, could I do a community art project that might help people channel their negativity or positivity or their just feelings in general in a more positive way towards an art project. So I came up with this different hands of different ethnicities. And then I was asking the question, we are, and then they could answer it in any way that they wanted to. For example, we are trying. You can see that above the A in the photograph. And I asked this question of my students. So we're talking 14 to 18-year-olds. I asked this to the residents at Edgewood. We met on the back deck.
One-on-one.
One-on-one. I just took an afternoon in the summer, and we just were both masked up, and the activities director would bring someone out to me, and we just have an interview, just the two of us, just talking. And I couldn't believe the positivity that all of those folks had. They could have no visitors, basically just cut off from all their family, and every answer was so positive. It was just incredible. I couldn't believe it. And then I also took this project to our nursing home and asked them the same questions. And then I did sit on a street corner as well. So I just had a really great sampling of people from our community who contributed to this project. And I guess they really talked about this a lot after I left. Not so much their answers, but just that someone sat and visited with them during that pandemic time outside. It's I'm gonna cry. It's touching. It was really touching because they weren't having any interactions, and I really wanted to know their opinions. And they just were delighted that someone cared what they had to say.
It made them feel
important
and relevant, because I think it must be easy to feel like, life is passing you by. But when somebody comes and says, what do you think?
Yeah. And I did care what they thought. Absolutely. I mean, it was just incredible, their answers and the knowledge and wisdom that they had. When we think about things in a different way, I was kind of negative Nelly, and here they were just so positive. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, sorry, went on a little long about that. We can go to the next slide. I think it's just a close up. So you can just see some of the people wrote it with their own hand. The elders, I wrote for them. So you'll see many in my handwriting, and that's why. They didn't want to write their own answers out. They wanted me to write for them. And there was just a wide array of answers to the question, we are. So it was a powerful project. That particular piece of art is now hanging in the courthouse here in Roberts County. So next slide. Now it's open for questions and hopefully some answers.
I think I saw a question when we were presenting. Ann Tacker, do you anticipate men participating in the jewelry project? My uncle was in Edgewood and Watertown, so I'm a little sensitive to engaging men too, although we knew what the demographics are. You thought about that, didn't you?
I did. I considered that. And I honestly think that for a lot of men that age, I mean, they can remember how important one piece of jewelry would have been to their mother.
And I think you have some men's jewelry too.
Yes, I have some tie tacks that I have cut the sharp edges off. I've been busy, snipping things so that they're ready to be glued. I absolutely want to incorporate men into these activities as much as possible. Do I choose some more feminine projects sometimes? Probably. Not on purpose, but a lot of these same things I do with my students at school. So I figure the gentlemen at school seem to like these things as well. So
how do we respond?
Would you like me to stop screen sharing so everybody can see?
Sure. Oh, here we are.
Hello, everyone.
A question, how many lessons are from the website? There are many lessons that we did that we didn't actually talk about today because we worked with the photos that we had, but there were, like, I know another person and I did an adaptation of one on the website. It was based on blizzard stories. It was 25 below in January of a couple of years ago. And we used we went in there. Now, Tonya, I think though, you are using more of
what pops into my head.
Well, and she's a busy teacher, so if she can take successful projects from her teaching and then adapt them for but we do always talk about, you know, the plagues and how we're addressing that, and I don't know what the documentation is going to look like going forward, but I know that you met with the activities director Connie both before and after, and addressed those topics in the design of it.
Yeah.
Is it?
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It's Phyllis Packard, and curious because, well, first of all, for men and jewelry, one of my favorite pieces of jewelry is the gold from my grandfather's watch fobs, and get them on watches and they'll take off.
Okay.
That was their jewelry. And a lot of
that's true. That's true. I should try and get some old watches and break them.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what we're doing. We're breaking old jewelry. Great idea. Thank you. Thank you.
The other question is, how much time do each of you, being that we're totally new to this, do each of you spend on this?
Well, usually at least a couple of hours of planning, especially if it's a project that I haven't done at school, like the quilting thing. A lot of time went into that one. Me drawing out the 3 quilts and cutting out the vintage. Some take more time than others. And I think that's why you have to have a variety of artists so that you can kind of spread the wealth. Because I have a full-time job, so I can't just delve into only just this. But I think some of them, like the still life and even the clay bowls, I've done that so many times at school that I really didn't have to plan much. I just knew what supplies I needed to load in the car and loaded it up. So.
And Jane, do you do most of the organization of deciding artists?
Yes, now it's kind of hard, you know, because we've taken such a long break during COVID and we're really just starting again. But you know, I wouldn't, I think trying to figure it out, and there was a lot of paperwork.
There's not going to be near as much paperwork that I've been promised, right, Rebecca? The paperwork was really the worst part, sorry, just to be honest with you. But now that that's going to be less of a task, I think it's just super fun. You just go in there and you do your thing. And
I think the documentation of the projects is good. I think there was some financial reporting that got a little bit repetitive each time that made it complicated.
It just took us a long time to fill out the paperwork.
We were a pilot project. We were catching on. And
I wouldn't
be where we will be.
And the other thing is, I think we were between folk artists for Josh Chrysler was doing it when we started, and then he soon left. And then about the time Annie came, then COVID came. So we haven't really gotten to work as directly with our folklorists, which I think will be really helpful moving forward too. Because I think, you know, a lot of the cultural programs were Dakota, and we know that we have other ethnic groups, but those still worked out really well, but we need to incorporate other traditions as well.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is so great that you're doing in Sisseton is when there's a visiting artist for something else working in the schools or performing or something, you've sort of been able to get a lot of those to come in to do Art for Life as well, which is really cool. I think, Rosemary, I think you raised your hand. Did you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
I did at one point a comment about the jewelry. Hi, Tonya, by the way.
Hello.
Long time.
I know.
most of the time, a lot of the jewelry that women accumulate is gifted to them by men. They're picking it out and they're giving it to us, right? So I think it's totally appropriate.
Nice to see you, by the way.
Yeah, good to see you.
They all offer just a comment on the paperwork. I think we all recognize going into this, Jane, and also this would have come up with the Chautauqua group too, had we not had things turned around and the State Veterans Home was funding those initial forays in the pilot term. But a lot of what what I felt was superfluous paperwork was trying to formalize and quantify the relationship with the elder care facility. And after a few years of analysis, we came to the conclusion that really all that was doing was slowing down the ship and possibly scaring away potential partners. And it was really for nothing more than just to get somebody to sign on the line to say, hey, we are an interested partner and we'll be there with you, with the Arts Council on this. And if you feel good about that relationship, why have it all formalized in paperwork that's just adding to everybody's misery? So we definitely, that is going to be a big improvement for 2.0.
Yeah, but I think keeping track, it was interesting to go back through the summaries that we had to write, and like that, the World War II memory one where I'd forgotten, there were veterans there and they really appreciated that, but it was like, and it was way too long for the, so it's good to have those things so that you remember. And especially as we start working maybe with bringing the, asking touring artists that are in the community, I think whatever training and context we can provide for them to make it successful will be really helpful to them and to the experience.
Any other questions? You're a pretty quiet group.
You've been on for a long time too.
We get to have dinner now, I think.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank everybody for presenting today and sharing your experiences. We will meet again Thursday for 2 more sessions with more people who are working in Art for Life, some of the early participants in North Dakota and an artist. I did send information out about an option to paint along with that artist workshop. You do not have to do that, but feel free if that's something you want to do. She says, that's totally optional. You'll still learn the same things, whether you're painting or just watching. Thank you, everybody. Keep your questions on hand. We're recording all these sessions. We'll be posting them so you can share with more people who you think should be viewing them. And feel free to reach out via email if there's anything you want us to make sure we cover next week or get answered, or on Thursday, not next week, this week. If there's anything you want us to get answered for you that we didn't have a chance for today, we're happy to get those covered.
There's one message I think I read. How often are we going to Edgewood? Actually, we were trying to do at least something once a month.
First year, I think we wrote down, we had 15 projects and 17 sessions. So a lot of them were just in our pilot year, were just like one time, but some of your sessions were multiple.
Right. So at least I was trying to get there. If there was no one else coming, I'd try and get there. That kind of thing, filling in so they would have an activity that month kind of thing. And that kind of how we
that's what we were trying to do.
Right. Okay.
And
I can't remember yesterday. Sorry.
I do have to ask, are you volunteering or are you paid?
I've been getting paid. I'm not gonna be a millionaire.
Right, the artist is paid at least with our arts agency, the coordinator is volunteer. Okay. But like I said, I don't think the coordinator's workload is it's organizing though. It's trying to line up if Tonya can't be there and working with the touring artists that come in. But the bulk of the work is the artist preparing and being there. And then I just thought it was fun to go. Whenever I had the chance, I would go, but that wasn't.
She's
all the
being
time.
humble, as you know.
Yes, Phyllis, our grant dollars are intended to pay artists and they can also be used for supplies. But I know with some of the relationships, the elder care site was able to purchase supplies. And so then the funds could just be used to pay artists. And so it can be a combination, but artists should be paid. We want them paid. We know they want to be paid and need to be paid. So
one of our strong philosophies, and artists should be paid. We also feel the administrators should be paid that we hire to help put programs. I mean, I'm volunteer at all times, but I'm getting older and
But I
a
think
little
it's
problematic at
I
times.
think it's a good question, and then the artist does put a lot, as Tonya mentioned, of time into preparation. So that needs to be compensated well. It's not just time teaching, but it's also time preparing. I know that this grant is looking for 6 sessions that could be made up of multiple activities. So one activity is 1 or more sessions, but we are looking for 6 sessions for the funds. And I was going to have Rebecca address food costs, because I mentioned incorporating a social food or food as part of the activity event. What is the, are there restrictions about spending the grant on food?
I believe there are, but I'm not prepared to answer that question right now without looking more into the stipulations.
Right.
I can follow up with that later in the week.
Yeah, I know a lot of the grant funds are tied to the federal restriction, but I'm not sure if these are or not. And yeah.
That is something, that's a great question, first of all, especially the grant world. And can't believe I haven't even thought of that until now. So whoever brought that up, thank you. Right now, there isn't an answer for that going forward with the program because of what Annie just mentioned. And that is there are federal restrictions from the National Endowment for the Arts about not using grant funds for the purchase of food specifically or refreshment. Having said that, this next this has been a pilot project or a special project of the South Dakota Arts Council since its inception in 2017. And we'll be using those grant funds. When you heard me earlier thank the National Assembly for State Arts Agencies and Aroha Philanthropies, we'll be using those grant funds for this next round for bringing a few communities online yet in this grant period. And so those will not have federal ties to those restrictions. So I think what we'll do, since this is something that really could be useful, especially if I'd love to see some over time, some activity plans developed that are about foodways, and some of that traditional, some of the things that we used as our icebreaker today to kick it off. So we'll want to make sure that that's allowable in the future. So us as the Arts Council, we will find a way to treat those grants in a special way, which really means by funding them with state dollars so that we don't have the federal restrictions. Long answer to a complex question.
All right, thank you, Patrick. I do want to wrap up because we said we would end at 5 and let people go, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thanks for sharing really great information today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.